You think you married a simple girl, but you're clueless about who I really am, I whisper under my breath, my fingers tightening around the edge of the kitchen counter. The cold marble does little to soothe the burning fury inside me, ignited by Ronan's words slicing through the air from the living room. His laughter, laced with disdain, seeps through the walls, a stark contrast to the silence enveloping me in my refuge. I mean, Alara's great and all, but she's not exactly the brightest. Got lucky marrying into our family, if you ask me, Ronan boasts on the phone, his voice dripping with a condescension that's become all too familiar. My heart races, every beat a reminder of the drastic shift our marriage has taken. From the charming suitor who'd once courted me with grand gestures and sweet nothings, to the man who now finds sport in belittling his wife to his friends. The transformation wasn't overnight, but the descent from indifference to outright contempt and control was swift. Working in my mother's boutique was supposed to be a temporary arrangement, a way to help out while searching for something more aligned with my degree. Yet here I stand, years later, still folding clothes and dodging my husband's barbs about my lack of ambition. If only you knew, I mutter to the empty room, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. Ronan's voice grows louder, pulling me from my thoughts. Honestly, thought her family had more money. You know, with the boutique and all. Turns out, not so much. The revelation stings, not because of the truth in his words. Our financial struggles are no secret to me, but because of the implication. He married me under false pretenses, his affections as fabricated as the persona he paraded during our courtship. The facade crumbles a little more each day, revealing the true extent of his expectations. A hefty dowry, and a wife who would bend to his every whim. But beneath the veneer of the compliant spouse, a storm brews, fueled by the discovery of his hidden debts and gambling habits. The weight of his duplicity presses down on me, a constant reminder of the life I've been ensnared in. A plan begins to form, vague and unrefined, but it's a start. A way out of the shadows, to cast light on the man behind the mask. The thought is both terrifying and exhilarating. Patience, I remind myself, echoing my mother Sylvia's advice. She doesn't know the full extent of Ronan's transgressions, but she's always sensed the turmoil beneath my calm exterior. The sound of Ronan ending his call pulls me back to the present, the immediate need to conceal my turmoil paramount. I straighten, schooling my features into a mask of indifference before stepping back into the living room. Ronan doesn't spare me a glance, too engrossed in his phone, and for a moment, I'm grateful for the neglect. The evening passes with minimal interaction, a dance we've perfected over the months. But as I lay in bed, Ronan's snores filling the room, I can't help but feel the shift within me. The veil has lifted, and with it, the resolve to no longer be the victim in my own story. Tonight, the seeds of rebellion are sown, watered by the bitter tears of realization and the silent vow of retribution. Tomorrow, I begin to fight back, armed with the truth and the determination to reclaim my life from the ruins of a marriage built on deceit. The sun hadn't even crept through the curtains before Ronan's voice pierced the morning silence, a harbinger of the storm to come. "Alara, what's this? The coffee tastes like mud." His words, sharp and unforgiving, sliced through the last remnants of sleep clinging to my consciousness. I must have mixed up the measurements, I stammer, my voice barely above a whisper as I rush to his side, mug in hand. The truth is, the coffee is the same as it always is, but with Ronan, any minor deviation, or imagined one, is grounds for criticism. "Useless," he mutters under his breath, pushing the mug into my hands with such force that the hot liquid sloshes over the sides, scalding my skin. I wince, but dare not let the pain show. Showing weakness only fuels his disdain. As I turn to remake the coffee, trying to steady my trembling hands, Ronan's voice follows me, relentless. "And make sure breakfast is ready on time today. I have an important meeting. Can't afford to be late because you're dawdling." The morning wears on, each moment laden with tension. Breakfast is a silent affair, Ronan buried in his phone, occasionally throwing out commands or criticisms. The eggs are too runny, the toast not crisp enough. It seems there's no end to his displeasure. It's during these moments, caught in the cyclone of Ronan's demands, that I ponder the drastic change in him. The man I married, who once spoke of love and partnership, now sees me as little more than a servant in his grand scheme of life. The realization stings, a bitter pill swallowed daily. The door slams shut behind him, a temporary reprieve from his tirades. But the silence left in his wake is heavy, a constant reminder of the farce my life has become. I clear the breakfast dishes, my movements automatic, thoughts miles away. It's in this mechanical state that I find the envelope, used hidden beneath a pile of unopened bills, a reminder of another of Ronan's secrets. His gambling habits, once a mere whisper of concern, have ballooned into a full-blown storm, threatening to engulf us both. The numbers scrawled across the bills are astronomical, figures that we can't possibly hope to cover with the boutique's modest earnings and Ronan's dwindling salary. I sit, the weight of the envelope in my hands, a tangible symbol of the lies and deceit that have woven their way through our marriage. It's this moment, this tangible proof of Ronan's betrayal, that solidifies my resolve. No longer can I stand idly by, a spectator in my own life. The day drags on, each tick of the clock a reminder of the evening confrontation that awaits. When Ronan returns, his mood is foul, the remnants of whatever transpired at his meeting written clearly across his face. Before I can brace myself, he's upon me, his words a torrent of blame and anger. Do you have any idea how much pressure I'm under? And what do I come home to? A wife who can't even make a decent cup of coffee. The accusations sting, but they also fuel a fire within me. Ronan, we need to talk about the bills. The gambling debts. We can't. He cuts me off with a scoff, his eyes narrowing. Oh, so now you're keeping tabs on me? I work day in, day out, and this is the thanks I get? The argument spirals, his anger a palpable force that threatens to consume the room. But amidst the chaos, a clarity settles over me. This isn't just about surviving Ronan's tirades anymore. It's about reclaiming my life, piece by shattered piece. I won't let you drag us down with your debts, I assert, my voice steadier than I feel. We're going to fix this, but not like this. Not with lies. Ronan's response is a sneer, a promise of more battles to come. But as I stand my ground, I realize that this is just the beginning. The facade of our marriage has crumbled, revealing the rot beneath, and it's up to me to clear the wreckage, to forge a path out of the despair Ronan has cloaked us in. A year into our marriage, the facade of harmony has not just cracked but shattered, revealing the grim reality of our union. Ronan's abuse, both verbal and emotional, has escalated, pushing me into a corner of isolation and despair. Yet, it's in this darkness that a plan begins to take shape, a beacon of hope in the relentless storm. Sitting across from my mother, Sylvia, in the dim light of the boutique after hours, I finally muster the courage to voice the truth. Mom, Ronan's not who we thought he was. The gambling, the debts, it's worse than I ever imagined. Sylvia's expression, a mix of concern and resolve, doesn't waver. Alara, you've been carrying this burden alone for too long. It's time we face this head on. But how? He's made it clear he won't change. And now, there's talk of selling the boutique to cover his debts. I confess, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. We won't let that happen, Sylvia asserts, her voice firm. It's time Ronan understood the consequences of his actions. We've been silent for too long. The strategy we devise is simple, yet daring. We'll confront Ronan, not with accusations, but with the stark reality of our financial situation. It's a gamble, but one we're willing to take to expose his true motives. The opportunity presents itself one evening when Ronan, in a rare moment of calm, mentions the boutique. Alara, we need to talk about selling. It could solve a lot of our problems. Standing in our living room, I feel Sylvia's supportive presence behind me as I face him. Ronan, the boutique isn't the problem, it's the solution. Your gambling is what's brought us here. Ronan's reaction is immediate, his face contorting with anger. So this is my fault? I'm working day and night, and you blame me? It's not about blame. It's about reality. Your debts are drowning us, and selling the boutique won't fix that, I reply, my voice steady despite the shaking of my hands. Sylvia steps forward, her demeanor unyielding. The boutique has been in our family for generations. It's not just a business, it's our legacy, and we won't let it be destroyed by recklessness. Ronan's gaze shifts between us, a mixture of surprise and defiance in his eyes. You think you can dictate what I do? It's my name on the line. But it's our lives at stake, I counter, emboldened by my mother's strength. We're willing to work with you, Ronan, but not at the expense of our future. The standoff ends with Ronan storming out, his threats echoing behind him. But in his absence, a sense of unity fortifies between my mother and me. For the first time in months, I feel a flicker of hope. The following days are tense, with Ronan's mood swinging wildly. Yet there's a shift in the air, a sense that the tide may be turning. My resolve hardens with each passing moment, the plan to expose Ronan's true motives gaining clarity. One evening, as I sit alone in the boutique pondering the path ahead, a knock at the door jolts me from my thoughts. It's Jude, an old friend and confidant, whose unexpected visit brings a sense of normalcy to my chaotic world. "Alara, I've been worried about you. How are you holding up?" Jude's concern is genuine, a balm to the wounds inflicted by months of turmoil. "It's complicated. Ronan's not the man I thought he was," I admit, the words flowing more freely than I anticipated. Jude listens intently, his expression a mix of anger and sympathy. "You don't have to go through this alone, Alara. If there's anything I can do..." It's in this moment, confiding in Jude, that the final piece of our plan crystallizes. Ronan's actions, once hidden behind closed doors, will soon be brought to light. With Jude's unexpected support, the journey toward justice and revenge seems less daunting. Together, we begin to lay the groundwork for Ronan's public exposure, a step toward reclaiming my life from the ruins of a marriage built on deceit and manipulation. The flu hit me like a freight train, leaving me bedridden and weak. In any other household, sickness might elicit a modicum of sympathy or care. But in mine, it's seen as nothing more than an inconvenience, a failure to fulfill my duties as Ronan's wife. "Alara, this place is a mess," Ronan barks, his voice booming through the small, dark, cluttered apartment that's felt more like a prison than a home these past months. "And what's this? You're still in bed?" It's nearly noon. Struggling to sit up, I clutch the blanket tighter around my shivering body. "I'm really not well, Ronan. I can barely stand," I manage to say, my voice weak and hoarse. Ronan's glare is icy as he surveys the room, his disgust palpable. "Sick? Or just lazy? You know, I can't rely on you for anything." His words cut deeper than the sharp pains racking my body. It's in this moment of vulnerability, faced with his unrelenting cruelty, that the resolve within me hardens further. I need to escape this cycle of abuse, not just for my sake, but for my sanity. As Ronan storms out, presumably to find solace in his vices, I'm left alone with my thoughts and a growing sense of desperation. It's then that I remember Jude's offer of support. Picking up my phone feels like lifting a boulder, but the need for an ally, for someone to understand, gives me strength. Jude answers on the second ring. "Alara, how are you?" "Jude, I need help," I admit, the admission of weakness bringing tears to my eyes. There's no hesitation on his end. "I'll be right there," he says, and the line goes dead. When Jude arrives, the concern in his eyes is a stark contrast to the disdain I've grown accustomed to from Ronan. He doesn't recoil at the sight of the disarray or my disheveled state. Instead, he steps forward, ready to offer whatever aid he can. "Alara, tell me what to do. How can I help?" Jude asks, his voice steady and comforting. "Just being here is more than enough," I reply, a small smile breaking through the gloom. Together, we tidy up the space, his presence a calming force in the storm that has become my life. It's during this rare moment of peace that I confide in Jude the full extent of Ronan's behavior, the manipulation, the debts, and the emotional torment. Jude listens in silence, his expression hardening with each revelation. "This can't go on, Alara. You deserve so much better," Jude says once I've finished, his conviction clear. "I know, but I'm not sure what to do. I feel so trapped," I confess, the weight of my situation bearing down on me. Jude's response is immediate and resolute. "We'll find a way. You're not alone in this. Remember that." As Jude leaves, promising to return with help, I'm left with a newfound sense of determination. His visit, though brief, has reignited the flame of resistance within me. I can't change the past, but with Jude's support, I can fight for a future free from Ronan's tyranny. The days that follow are a blur of planning and whispered conversations. Jude becomes an invaluable ally, offering both emotional support and practical assistance. Together, we begin to document Ronan's abuses, compiling evidence for the day when we can finally expose him and break free from his grasp. It's a dangerous game we're playing, one fraught with risk and uncertainty, but the alternative, a life of continued abuse and despair, is no longer an option. With each passing day, my resolve strengthens, fueled by the support of my unlikely ally and the hope for a brighter future. The path to freedom is fraught with obstacles, but for the first time in a long time, I dare to believe that escape is within reach. Jude's unexpected visit had breathed new life into my wilted spirit, his presence a beacon of hope in the unending night that had become my existence. It was during one of these visits, as we sat plotting our next move in the quiet sanctuary of my mother's boutique after hours, that fate decided to twist the knife a bit further. Ronan, in a rare and unforeseen move, decided to grace the boutique with his presence. His sudden appearance at the door was like a storm cloud blotting out the sun, casting a shadow over the newfound hope I had clung to so desperately. "Alara, what the hell is this? Playing shop while the house falls apart." Ronan's voice boomed through the space, his words laced with venom. Jude, ever the pillar of calm in the face of adversity, stood beside me, an unwavering ally against Ronan's tempest. "Everything's under control, Ronan. Maybe you should head back," Jude suggested, his tone firm yet diplomatic, a stark contrast to Ronan's aggression. Ronan's eyes narrowed, his gaze flitting between Jude and me, suspicion igniting like wildfire in his eyes. "And who are you to tell me what to do? Another of Alara's little projects?" The tension in the air was palpable, a tangible force that seemed to squeeze the very breath from my lungs. Yet, despite the fear that clawed at my insides, a spark of defiance flickered to life. "Jude is a friend, someone who actually cares about my well-being," I retorted, my voice stronger than I felt. Ronan's laugh was cruel, a sound that sent shivers down my spine. "A friend, huh? Don't make me laugh. You're pathetic, Alara, both of you." It was then, amidst the torrent of Ronan's insults, that Jude did something unexpected. He pulled out his phone, subtly positioning it to capture the tirade. Ronan, too caught up in his own fury, failed to notice the silent witness documenting his every word. As Ronan stormed out, leaving a trail of bitter words in his wake, Jude turned to me, his expression grave. "I got it all on video, Alara. This could be what we need to expose him." The realization of what Jude had done, of the weapon we now possessed, was overwhelming. A mixture of fear and exhilaration flooded through me, the implications of our actions both terrifying and thrilling. "Thank you, Jude. I don't know what to say." Jude's smile was gentle, a balm to the chaos that had erupted. "You don't have to say anything. Just know you're not alone." In the days that followed, the video became the cornerstone of our plan. Jude, with contacts in local media and a keen sense of justice, began laying the groundwork for Ronan's exposure. Our meetings were filled with whispered strategies and cautious optimism, each step forward a delicate dance on the tightrope of revenge. The decision to go public was not made lightly. The potential fallout loomed large, a specter of consequence that could not be ignored. Yet, the need for justice, for an end to the cycle of abuse, outweighed the fear. "It's time, Alara. Are you ready?" Jude asked one evening, his finger hovering over the send button that would catapult our carefully guarded secret into the unforgiving light of public scrutiny. Taking a deep breath, I nodded, the weight of the moment settling heavy on my shoulders. "I'm ready. Let's do this." With a single click, Jude set the wheels of retribution in motion. The video, a damning testament to Ronan's true nature, was sent spiraling into the digital ether, a harbinger of the storm to come. As we waited for the inevitable backlash, a sense of peace settled over me. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I dared to hope for a future free from the shadows of Ronan's tyranny. The battle was far from over, but with Jude by my side, I felt invincible. Together, we had ignited the flame of justice, and now there was no turning back. The morning after sending the video felt like the calm before the storm. The silence was almost deafening, a stark contrast to the chaos I knew was brewing on the horizon. Jude and I met at the boutique, our unofficial war room, waiting for the inevitable explosion that would come once Ronan discovered his sins laid bare for all to see. It wasn't long before the first signs of the tempest appeared. My phone buzzed relentlessly, notifications flooding in as the video spread like wildfire across social media platforms. The local news had picked up the story, amplifying it further, the headline screaming betrayal and deceit. Alara Morris exposes husband's abuse and deceit. It read, a simple yet powerful declaration of my stand against Ronan. As the world watched, Ronan's carefully constructed facade crumbled. Friends, colleagues, and even strangers voiced their support for me, their words a balm to the wounds inflicted over the years. But with the support came backlash, Ronan's defenders crawling from the woodwork, their words sharp and unforgiving. I was preparing for another day at the boutique when Ronan stormed in, his face a mask of rage and humiliation. "You've ruined me, Alara," he spat, his voice trembling with fury. "How dare you air our dirty laundry for the world to see?" Standing my ground, I met his gaze, the fear that once would have crippled me, now replaced by a steadfast resolve. "No, Ronan, you did this to yourself. I'm just shedding light on the truth." The confrontation was intense, Ronan's anger clashing with my newfound strength. Jude was there, a silent sentinel, ready to intervene if necessary. But it was clear Ronan's power over me had diminished, his threats empty in the face of my determination. "You'll pay for this," Ronan hissed, a final desperate attempt to regain control. But his words no longer held sway over me. "I already have, Ronan. Now it's your turn." The fallout from the video was swift and merciless. Ronan's professional life unraveled as his employer, faced with public pressure, terminated his position. His social circle, once a fortress of support, crumbled as friends and acquaintances distanced themselves, unwilling to be associated with a man exposed as an abuser and manipulator. With each passing day, the reality of his situation seemed to weigh heavier on Ronan, his once confident demeanor replaced by a sullen, defeated air. The tables had turned, and the predator found himself the prey, isolated and ostracized by the very community he had once dominated. For me, the days became a blur of interviews and meetings, my story a rallying cry for those who had suffered in silence. The support was overwhelming, a testament to the power of truth and the resilience of the human spirit. As Ronan's world collapsed around him, a sense of vindication filled me. It wasn't joy. There was no joy in the pain and suffering that had led to this moment, but a deep, profound sense of justice. For too long, I had lived in the shadows of Ronan's tyranny, but no more. The battle was far from over. Legal proceedings loomed on the horizon, a daunting path fraught with its own challenges. But as I stood in the boutique, now a beacon of hope and defiance, I knew I was ready to face whatever came next. With Jude by my side and a community of supporters behind me, I stepped into the light, a survivor no longer defined by the abuse I had endured, but by the strength I had found in my fight for justice. Ronan's downfall was not the end of my story, but the beginning of a new chapter, one written on my terms, in my voice. The repercussions of Ronan's exposure reverberated far beyond the initial shockwave, eroding the very foundation of his existence. His professional downfall was swift, a stark reminder of the consequences of his actions. But it was the personal fallout that truly marked the beginning of his undoing. Ronan, once a fixture in social circles, now found himself ostracized, a pariah in the community he had dominated. The isolation was a bitter pill to swallow, each day a reminder of the empire of lies he had built and lost. I watched from a distance, my resolve unshaken, as Ronan grappled with his new reality. The boutique became my sanctuary, a place of strength and solidarity. Jude was a constant presence, his support unwavering as we navigated the aftermath together. It was during one of our strategy sessions that Ronan made his last desperate attempt to regain control. He barged into the boutique, his eyes wild with desperation. "Alara, you have to stop this. You're destroying everything." His plea was met with cold indifference. "You did this to yourself, Ronan. I'm just seeking justice." Ronan's gaze flickered between Jude and me, searching for any sign of weakness. But there was none to be found. "You'll regret this," he muttered, a hollow threat that no longer held any power. The legal proceedings were grueling, a drawn-out battle that tested my limits. But with each passing day, I grew stronger, more confident in my pursuit of justice. Ronan's attempts to undermine me fell on deaf ears, his credibility shattered by his own actions. As the divorce settlement was finalized, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief wash over me. The court awarded me a substantial portion of Ronan's assets, a small compensation for the years of deceit and abuse. But it was more than just financial security. It was a symbol of my victory over Ronan, a tangible proof of my newfound independence. "You're free now, Alara," Jude said, his voice filled with pride. The words resonated deep within me, a beacon of hope in the aftermath of the storm. "I know," it's finally over. In the months that followed, Ronan's life continued to unravel. His attempts to rebuild his reputation were futile, the stain of his actions indelible. The man who had once held so much power was now a shadow of his former self, struggling to navigate a world that had turned its back on him. For me, the end of my marriage to Ronan marked the beginning of a new chapter. The boutique thrived, a testament to my resilience and determination. And with each passing day, I found strength in my independence, my spirit no longer weighed down by the chains of the past. As I stood in the boutique, surrounded by friends and supporters, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought me here. The road had been long and fraught with challenges, but I had emerged stronger, a survivor in the truest sense. "Here's to new beginnings," Jude toasted, raising his glass in a salute. I smiled, my heart full of gratitude for the support that had carried me through the darkest of times. "To new beginnings," I echoed, my voice steady and sure. The battle was over, but my story was just beginning. A story of hope, of courage, and of a woman who refused to be silenced. Ronan's downfall was not just a victory for me, but for all those who had suffered in silence, a beacon of light in the darkness. As I looked around at the faces of my friends and supporters, I knew that this was not the end, but a new beginning. A chance to rebuild, to dream, and to live a life free from the shadows of the past. In the aftermath of Ronan's downfall, life began to take on a new rhythm, one marked by peace rather than turmoil. The boutique, once a silent witness to my suffering, became a vibrant hub of creativity and empowerment. With each passing day, I found myself stepping more confidently into the role of proprietor, my mother's legacy now firmly in my hands. It was during a quiet morning, the sun casting a warm glow over the newly arranged displays, that Sylvia approached me, her eyes shining with unspoken pride. "You've done well, Alara. Your strength has turned this place into more than just a boutique. It's a symbol of hope." Her words, simple yet profound, filled me with a sense of accomplishment. "Thanks, Mom. It feels good to be free to make a difference." The boutique had become more than just a business. It was a community. Women from all walks of life came not just to shop, but to share their stories, finding solace and strength in the solidarity we offered. And as my story became known, the boutique's mission evolved, transforming into a beacon for those seeking to reclaim their lives from the shadows of abuse. One afternoon, as I was rearranging a window display, a familiar face appeared on the other side of the glass. Jude, his supportive presence a constant throughout my journey, stepped inside, a smile playing on his lips. "Looks like you've turned this place into something truly special, Alara," he commented, his gaze sweeping over the vibrant interior. I smiled, acknowledging the truth in his words. "It's become more than I ever imagined, and it's all thanks to the support of friends like you." Jude's smile widened. "I wouldn't have missed it for the world. You've turned your pain into something powerful, Alara. You should be proud." Our conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a customer, a young woman whose eyes held a familiar flicker of resolve. As Jude excused himself, I turned my attention to her, ready to offer the same support that had once been extended to me. The boutique was not just a place of business. It had become a sanctuary, a place where stories of pain and resilience were woven into the very fabric of its existence. And as I shared my journey, I found strength in the shared experiences, a collective healing that transcended the personal. In the months that followed, my advocacy work grew, the boutique serving as a launching pad for initiatives aimed at supporting survivors of domestic abuse. Seminars, workshops, and support groups filled our calendar, each event a step towards breaking the silence that had once kept me prisoner. As I closed the boutique one evening, the last rays of sunlight casting a soft glow over the empty space, I allowed myself a moment of reflection. The journey had been long, filled with moments of despair and triumph, but as I stood there, surrounded by the tangible evidence of my resilience, I felt a deep, abiding sense of peace. Ronan's shadow no longer loomed over my life. Instead, I had emerged from the darkness, my spirit unbroken, my resolve unwavering. The boutique, once a reminder of my pain, was now a testament to my strength, a symbol of hope for those walking the path I had once trod. As I locked the door and stepped out into the evening, the cool air brushing against my skin, I felt a profound sense of closure. The battle was over, and I had emerged victorious, not just over Ronan, but over the fear and doubt that had once held me captive. Walking away from the boutique, I looked up at the stars, their light a reminder of the endless possibilities that lay ahead. The future was mine to shape, a blank canvas awaiting the touch of my hand. And as I took those first steps into the unknown, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, I would face them with the same courage and determination that had led me to this moment of rebirth. The end of my marriage to Ronan was not just an ending. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with hope, healing, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow.
Ending our marriage was undoubtedly the right decision. You and your child remain as pitiable as ever. Despite earning $200,000 a year, my ex-husband seems more interested in boasting about himself than addressing our situation. He introduces me to his new wife, Harriet, leaving me bewildered about his thought process. As I attempt to leave, my ex-husband blocks my path and questions whether my apparent jealousy stems from their perceived happiness. His condescending remark about my financial status doesn't sit well with me. Feeling a mix of disgust and exasperation, I maintain my silence. However, my son Johnny intervenes, suggesting that we fire this guy. Fast forward to the present. I am Lisa, 42 years old, married to George, a former co-worker since I was 26. After working and quitting when I became pregnant, I contemplate returning to the workforce as Johnny begins elementary school. George, eager for me to find employment, is persistent in his suggestions and preferences for my work hours. Although initially supportive, George's true colors begin to show when I start a part-time job. A few months into my new job, a shocking message arrives on my phone from a former colleague, revealing my husband's affair with a woman from our company, the daughter of the division manager. The accompanying pictures leave me deeply shaken. As the gossip unfolds, I decide to respond with thanks and close the messaging app, grappling with the unexpected turn of events. I never fathomed that my husband could be unfaithful, but as I reflected on recent events, everything fell into place. His persistent push for me to work harder, even when childcare arrangements were not settled, now made sense. He likely saw it as an opportunity to have more freedom for his affair. Today, he claims to be on an overnight business trip, but I suspect it's a cover for quality time with his mistress. Confronting him the next day, I couldn't maintain a facade of composure. I presented the incriminating pictures, expecting some form of excuse. However, his response shocked me. Acknowledging his infidelity without remorse, he explained that the woman was the division manager's daughter, and marrying her would secure his promotion. He coldly compared her to me, emphasizing her youth and attractiveness. His lack of guilt and blatant disrespect left me disappointed. Instead of apologizing, he suggested an expedited divorce. Unable to feign indifference, I agreed for the sake of my mental well-being and swiftly settled for child support and property division. With custody of Johnny, he left callously, advising me to scrape by on a single income while he joined the ranks of the wealthy through his impending marriage. Though mentally relieved, daily life posed new challenges. Despite the financial support, my savings were modest, and I had to transition from part-time to full-time work. Johnny's after-school programs became a necessity, adding to the complexity of our lives. The unfamiliarity of a full-time job, coupled with the sole responsibility for housework, made every day a struggle. As the years passed, adaptation became a constant companion. Now, 7 years post-divorce, with Johnny in middle school, life has settled into a rhythm. He can mostly take care of himself, allowing me to reflect on the resilience developed through the challenges and changes life threw our way. I think he's grown into a very responsible boy compared to other boys his age, perhaps because I'm always so busy. He even takes on the responsibilities of cooking and doing laundry for me. Thanks to him, I've been free from housework and childcare, and for the past few years, I've had time for myself. Both my personal and working life are going very well. Now I can say it clearly. I'm certainly glad I broke up with that awful man. If I had continued to be married to him, I wouldn't have this life now. However, one day, while my son and I were shopping at the local mall, I ran into that terrible guy, my ex-husband, George. I didn't notice him, but he started talking to me. Hey, isn't that you, Lisa? Long time no see. You've really aged. Is that what you say to someone you haven't seen in a while? A person with normal sensitivity would never say that to a woman. I could tell in an instant that he hadn't grown at all as a person. Within a few seconds of meeting him, annoyance crept in, and I snapped back. Huh? You're the one who's aged a lot. I didn't recognize you for a moment. Honestly, George had aged a lot. I hadn't seen him for 7 years, but it felt like he aged twice as much. His hair was thinning, and his belly protruded, showing a complete middle-aged figure. I thought talking to my ex-husband was a waste of time, so I tried to walk away, saying, "Oh well, long time no see. But I don't really have anything to say to you. See you later." However, he wouldn't let me go. He stood in my way and started talking nonsense. Hey, don't be so cold. The family is all together again. Let's catch up for a bit. I didn't want to hear anything about his life. If there's one thing I'd like to complain about, it's that he stopped paying child support a few years after our divorce. Child support is not my right, but Johnny's right. The fact that he could talk so openly in front of Johnny, who was owed that money, made me irritated. But George didn't care about my mood at all. He started talking about his recent life, which I didn't want to hear. After our divorce, I remarried. I married the daughter of the manager who was in that picture with me. Oh, he's not a manager anymore. He's an executive now. And I got promoted to manager. I'm definitely winning now. To be honest, I don't care how much George has been promoted. It has nothing to do with me, and I'm not envious. All I thought was, why are you bragging about not paying child support even after being promoted? He's such a cheap man to not even pay a few $1,000s a month, even though he's winning. And to rub it in even more, George continued his bragging. Breaking up with you was the right choice. You and your son still look poor. I make $200,000 a year. In the end, George just wanted to brag about himself. He didn't even try to hear about our lives. I thought that any normal parent would be curious about their child's life. But he didn't even talk to Johnny, who was standing right in front of him. He's really a terrible father. Oh, that reminds me. Let me introduce you. Hey. George called over a woman who was looking at clothes in the distance. The woman came over, and I knew right away who she was. I had seen her in a picture before. It was George's new wife, Harriet. Meet my wife, Harriet. How about that? She's way more beautiful than you, isn't she? He introduced me to his new wife. What was he thinking? This woman stole my husband when we were married. I'm glad we're apart now. But back then, it was shocking, and I did resent it at the time. I have no good impression of this woman at all. You'd think my ex-husband would know that, even though he's not the brightest, but he must be really looking down on us. He seems not to have the brains to realize even that. Oh, is that all? I don't have time. Bye-bye, I said, feeling extremely unpleasant. Of course, I don't even glance at the woman, let alone greet her. Wait a minute. As I was about to leave, he blocked my path again. I wanted to leave the scene as soon as possible so I wouldn't retort, but my ex-husband stood in front of me, blocking my path. Stop it. There's no point in hearing about your home life. Jealous because we look happy. You're not just poor in money. Don't be bitter in your heart too. You'll only get more miserable. My ex-husband arbitrarily decides that I'm unhappy. Mind your own business. I'm perfectly happy, so leave me alone. The most unfortunate thing lately is being spoken to by you. Even though I say I'm happy, my ex-husband doesn't believe it at all and arbitrarily worries about my situation. Well, happiness varies from person to person, but being poor isn't happy. Don't push yourself. It's probably impossible for you to remarry with those conditions. I'm worried about you as your ex-husband, you know. Saying that, my ex-husband's face showed an expression completely opposite to concern. He's making a complete fool of me. When I looked at the face of my ex-husband's wife standing next to him, she was also smirking, looking like she's making fun of me. I'll never be friends with this woman. She feels good by looking down on people. She's the worst kind of woman. You'd think my ex-husband would know that, even though he's not the brightest, but he must be really looking down on us. He seems not to have the brains to realize even that. Oh, is that all? I don't have time. Bye-bye, I said, feeling extremely unpleasant. Of course, I didn't even glance at the woman, let alone greet her. As I was about to leave, he blocked my path again. I'll tell you, we're still in love, so the chance of getting back together is 0. Don't get your hopes up for something wrong. My ex-husband seems to be having some wild delusion. He thinks I'm still attached to him, even though it's been 7 years since our divorce due to his affair. His head is so full of fantasies that I can't say anything. When I was at a loss for words because of my ex-husband's ridiculous delusion, he seemed to think he was right. Hey, too shocked to say anything? Being a popular man is tough. What's popular about a middle-aged man's appearance? I'm past anger and starting to feel sick. When I was silent, my ex-husband tried to say something more, but Johnny interrupted him. Mom, can you fire this guy? Huh? My ex-husband was dumbfounded by Johnny's incomprehensible words. It seems that Johnny is very angry, calling me this guy instead of Dad. Well, it doesn't matter, but what do you mean? I'm not getting fired, am I? You're in middle school now. Study properly. He talked down to Johnny too. It's unforgivable that he's making fun of my beloved son as well. I was about to explode with anger at my ex-husband when I heard a voice calling me. Hey, what's going on here? A man came over calling out. My ex-husband froze when he saw the man's face. Why are you here, boss? My ex-husband asked the man in front of him. I'm just here shopping with my family. Are you saying I shouldn't be here? No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it that way, but I was just wondering why you were talking to my ex-wife. Oh, that's natural. She's my current wife, after all. What? Her. No, this is your wife, boss. I can't believe. Actually, about 3 years ago, I remarried with the CEO of my deceased husband's company, with whom I had lost my wife. The CEO and I became close after my divorce when he approached me while I was shopping at the supermarket. Since I had previously worked at the same company as my ex-husband, I knew the CEO. The CEO knew that my ex-husband had an affair with the head of his department's daughter, leading to our divorce, and that he later married her. It seemed that the CEO was quite bitter about this as a fellow man. But he thought he couldn't meddle in an employee's private life until he saw me at the supermarket and impulsively spoke to me. I was very surprised since I knew the CEO, but I didn't think he would remember my face and name as just an ordinary employee. Perhaps he remembered me easily because I worked at the reception desk of the company. It seems your marriage didn't work out, but I'm sure you'll find someone better soon. CEO, I'm glad you remember me, but you don't have to worry about me. I'm fine. At that time, I had been divorced for less than a year, so I was somewhat putting on a brave face. But the CEO, with his vast life experience, saw right through my act and comforted me with kind words. Divorce takes more than 3 times the effort of marriage. Even if you divorce smoothly, it's tiring. I've never been divorced, but I felt utterly unmotivated when I lost my wife to death. When a man and woman who once loved each other part ways, that's just how it is. So you don't need to put on a brave face. The CEO knew the loneliness of ending a married life. Indeed, while I was glad to have separated, I was also feeling a whirlpool of emotions like loneliness and emptiness at the time. So his words touched my heart. If talking to someone like me helps, call me anytime. I'll treat you to dinner whenever you like, he said, handing me his business card. I thought it would be too bold to contact him for about 2 years, but as time passed, I calmed down and wanted someone to talk to again, so I finally decided to call the CEO. Despite his busy schedule, the CEO made time for me and treated me to dinner. When I was an employee, the CEO was still a department head, and he had an unapproachable aura since he was the previous CEO's son. But once we had dinner together, I found him easy to talk to, like a nice uncle. Perhaps because I was no longer an employee, the CEO, and I quickly became good drinking buddies. Then, about a year passed, and the CEO proposed to me with a serious look. "You're kidding, Steve. Don't joke like that." I was told while drinking, so I thought it was a joke, but the CEO was serious. "At first, I wanted to encourage you after your divorce, but being with you really calms me down. I haven't felt this way since I lost my wife. Honestly, I feel like I'm the one being healed now. If you're willing, let's spend the rest of our lives together." "Give me a day to think about it," I said and consulted with my son. "I don't mind. You should decide based on whether you like him or not, Mom." Since there was no particular opposition, I decided to marry the CEO. To be honest, I liked him. I thought he was just a drinking buddy. But I also felt truly healed when I was with him. We both felt comforted, so I thought there was no obstacle to living together. And when I heard the story about the president's deceased wife, I really understood that he loved her. Every time I heard that story, I thought about how happy. The aftermath of encountering my ex-husband at the shopping mall took an unexpected turn, leading to revelations and consequences I hadn't foreseen. When I revealed to my ex-husband and his wife that I had remarried the president of my deceased husband's company, their reactions were shock and disbelief. My ex-husband's demeanor changed, and he attempted to smooth things over, but it was clear that the president took Johnny's words seriously, especially given rumors about my ex-husband's behavior in the company. The president decided to investigate the matter further, despite my ex-husband's attempts to dissuade him. Even his wife couldn't prevent the investigation from proceeding, although she tried to distance her father from the situation. As the investigation unfolded, it revealed a pattern of misconduct including harassment, verbal abuse, favoritism, and exploitation of their positions for personal gain. My ex-husband and the executive faced demotion and relocation to a branch office. Eventually, they resigned from the company and faced legal repercussions, including lawsuits from employees they had mistreated. The downfall of my ex-husband and his wife's deteriorating marriage underscored the importance of living honestly and treating others with sincerity. Meanwhile, life continued for me and my family. Despite being 42, I welcomed a healthy baby, and Johnny embraced his role as a big brother with love and care. Looking at my newborn's peaceful face, I felt a sense of gratitude and determination. Despite the challenges of raising another child at my age, I was committed to working hard for my family's well-being and future. As I faced each day, I carried with me a deep sense of gratitude for the new life that had entered our world. I prided myself on being a devoted father for securing a house for my daughter. However, my husband, without consulting me, decided to use my money to purchase a luxury apartment. Frustrated by his audacious plan, I swiftly responded by presenting him with divorce papers. In the face of my unexpected move, my husband was taken aback, clearly unprepared for such a turn of events. With a smirk, Jocelyn Anderson, a 50-year-old office worker with a passion for French since my student days, initiated what I considered the real retaliation. Let me take you back a bit. I had been married at 23, but my first husband passed away just 6 months into our marriage due to a tragic traffic accident caused by a drunk driver. Although I received $500,000 as insurance money, no amount of wealth could bring my late husband back. During that period of mourning, Ernest Anderson, a compassionate colleague from the same company, provided solace by lending a patient ear to my stories. Gradually, our connection deepened, leading to our remarriage when I was 25. Fast forward to the present, and my daughter, Christina, now an independent illustrator, had stirred tension in our family. Disagreements over her education arose during her senior year of high school. Ernest had always imposed his ideal path for Christina, envisioning her attending a prestigious university and pursuing a conventional career in a big corporation. His expectations clashed with Christina's passion for illustration, a talent she had cultivated since childhood. Despite my initial support for Ernest's educational decisions, I found myself at odds with him when Christina expressed her desire to attend an art university to become an illustrator. While I was open to embracing her chosen path, Ernest vehemently opposed it, insisting on a conventional trajectory that clashed with our daughter's dreams. The struggle over Christina's future had become a battleground, and the real retaliation was about to unfold. I opted not to embark on a freelance career initially, choosing instead to work for a company. Christina shared her aspirations to become an illustrator, but my husband dismissed her dreams, considering it merely a pastime with drawings. His harsh words compelled me to defend Christina's autonomy, asserting that it was her life, and she should have the opportunity to pursue her passion. This stance only fueled his anger, as he asserted that it was his daughter and that a child's role was to fulfill their parents' dreams. He adamantly believed that if Christina followed his prescribed path, she would unquestionably find happiness. I was taken aback by his biased views, hoping he would eventually understand and support our daughter's choices. Unfortunately, my optimism was misplaced, leading to a deep rift between us. Despite my financial support for Christina's education and living expenses, Ernest remained dissatisfied, continually expressing his discontent. Even after Christina successfully gained admission to her preferred art university and secured a job as an illustrator, Ernest refused to acknowledge her achievements. His complaints persisted, questioning the worth of the money spent on tutoring and labeling her a failure. Christina, resilient in her pursuit, worked energetically, occasionally sacrificing weekends and sleep for her craft. However, Ernest's attitude towards her job remained unchanged. Moreover, he became harsher towards me for supporting Christina, criticizing everyday aspects of our household. Realizing this was his true nature, I found staying at home increasingly painful. Fortunately, our work roles in different departments at the same company spared me from daily confrontations. Yet, amidst this strained dynamic, Ernest surprisingly declared his intention to buy Christina a luxury apartment, citing her importance as his daughter. Despite his apparent disdain for her career choice, this sudden change in attitude raised suspicions, prompting me to question his motives. Doubts crept into my mind about whether Ernest even had the financial means to purchase a luxury apartment. Observing my reaction, he coldly smirked and disclosed his plan, stating that I would be the one footing the bill. Shocked, I protested, urging him not to make such decisions without consulting me. Angrily, Ernest snorted, revealing his knowledge of the $500,000 insurance money from my late husband, suggesting I use it to fund the apartment. He callously declared his intent to live there with Christina, emphasizing that both she and I were ultimately his possessions. Fueled by a fierce anger, I could not fathom his vindictive scheme and the audacity to exploit crucial insurance money for such a purpose. In response, I retaliated without mercy, presenting him with divorce papers. Astonished, Ernest likely hadn't anticipated my preparedness, but this marked the commencement of my real retaliation. Facing him with a smirk, I explained my long-standing lack of trust in someone who discriminated against his own daughter and expressed my exhaustion with constant criticism. I disclosed my decision to divorce him, clarifying that I had been contemplating it for a while, waiting for the opportune moment. Seizing on his earlier mention of divorce, I handed him the papers, urging him to file quickly if he desired freedom. Initially dismissing it as a joke, Ernest reacted angrily when confronted with the reality of divorce. My anger peaked as he attempted to downplay the situation. Unperturbed, I insisted he accept the divorce papers, emphasizing the incomprehensible principles behind his actions. Threatening legal consultation, Ernest reluctantly received the papers, still claiming it was all a jest. Concerned about potential retaliation, I swiftly left the house, submitting the divorce papers to the city court. I promptly informed Christina about the outrageous behavior, and she too expressed fury. She condemned her father's actions and offered solace, suggesting that I stay at her apartment for a while. So, I made the decision to spend the night at Christina's place. That evening, we delved into discussions, meticulously planning our next moves against Ernest. About a week later, on holiday, Christina and I paid a visit to Ernest's house, the place I had called home until just a week prior, now feeling like a distant stranger's abode. Upon ringing the doorbell, Ernest swiftly emerged, adopting a condescending gaze as he questioned our purpose. He arrogantly assumed we had come to apologize for everything. Despite the infuriating condescension, I suppressed my anger and spoke in a meek, apologetic tone, claiming that I had indeed come to apologize for my wrongdoings. Christina, playing the role of a repentant daughter, echoed my sentiments. Oblivious to the theatrics, Ernest appeared genuinely pleased, believing we had come to our senses. However, his curiosity was piqued when he noticed the bags we carried, bags so full they were on the verge of bursting, tied up tightly to conceal their contents. From one of the bags, I extracted a bundle of actual $10,000 bills. Expressing remorse for my actions, I offered him some of my late husband's insurance money, urging him to use it to live in the luxury apartment with Christina. I mentioned the $500,000 total and asked him to keep it safe. Ernest's eyes gleamed at the sight of the money, and he eagerly agreed to safeguard it. He led us into the house without hesitation. Despite having left just a week earlier, the place was in disarray, with laundry and garbage scattered about. Suppressing laughter, I imagined Ernest's struggle to maintain the house on his own. Christina and I placed the bag's contents into the safe, excluding the $10,000 bundle. Fortunately, when Ernest went to the kitchen to make coffee, he remained oblivious to our actions. After returning to Christina's apartment, I grabbed the bags and left for a new place on my own. Christina bid me farewell with a smile, assuring me she would contact me once she was settled. 2 days later, while I was peacefully asleep in my new residence, Ernest called, inquiring about the $500,000. I chuckled heartily, realizing that he had taken longer than expected to notice. Ernest had fallen for our trap. The bags mostly contained just newspapers, cleverly arranged to create the illusion of holding $500,000. I had only prepared $110,000 from the bank to make Ernest believe my ruse. After depositing that money back into my account, it was no longer in my possession. If Ernest had probed further and asked to see inside the bags, I intended to reveal the truth, asserting that such an incredible deal couldn't possibly be genuine. However, deceived by just the $10,000, Ernest had been completely fooled. I had only prepared $110,000 from the bank to make Ernest believe me. After depositing that money back into my account, it was no longer in my possession. If Ernest had probed further and asked to see inside the bags, I intended to reveal the truth, asserting that such an incredible deal couldn't possibly be genuine. However, deceived by just the $10,000, Ernest had been completely fooled. Until now, you did terrible things to Christina and me, so I thought it was only fair to retaliate like this. If you want to resent someone, resent your past self, not me, I calmly stated. Ernest, looking troubled, began to plead, admitting his faults and asking me to return. Shocked by his selfish reasoning, I firmly rejected his proposal. I'm not an ATM or your housekeeper. You're an adult, handle it yourself. Besides, I'm in France now. This isn't just a vacation, it's an overseas transfer for work. I decided to divorce you and start a new life abroad. I revealed, explaining my decision to pursue my dreams and escape from him. Ernest, perplexed by the news, questioned why I hadn't informed him earlier. I dismissed his query, stating that we were practically strangers now, working in different departments. Furthermore, I revealed that Christina would contact him the next day through a messaging app. The following day, amidst the early hours due to the time difference, I initiated a video call through the messaging app with Ernest and Christina. Christina began expressing her sentiments, reminiscing about her childhood adoration for Ernest, but quickly transitioning to her current disdain. You completely dismissed my career choice. That's when I saw your true nature. You just wanted to control me. There was no love. Now, I hate you and never want to see you again. This call is the last time we'll speak. I'm cutting ties, Christina declared firmly, leaving Ernest visibly distressed. Unexpectedly calm, Ernest pleaded for her understanding, seemingly assuming Christina would always adore him. However, Christina remained resolute, urging him to reflect on his actions. She then informed him that she had moved, advising him not to attempt to locate her new address through investigators or any other means. Adding to her announcement, I informed Ernest that I had informed his workplace, relatives, and parents about the reasons for our divorce, ensuring transparency about our decision. With that, the call concluded, leaving Ernest to reflect on the consequences of his actions. After ending the video call with Christina, I mirrored her actions, ignoring Ernest's pleading apologies. His remorse no longer held any significance to me. Christina expressed a sense of relief, feeling liberated after voicing her true feelings. Executing our plan brought a semblance of satisfaction, especially witnessing the impact it had on Ernest. In the aftermath, Ernest faced consequences at various fronts. He became uncomfortable at work and eventually resigned. Disowned by relatives and parents, he had to abandon the luxury apartment purchase. His disruptive actions even led to a scene at Christina's workplace, resulting in a ban for entering. Ernest's selfish choices resulted in a cascade of losses, and he retreated into a reclusive existence at home. Attempts to contact him for work-related matters were in vain. When a colleague finally visited his house, they encountered a disheveled Ernest with a wild beard, lifeless face, and a nauseating odor emanating from his abode. His once home had transformed into a ghostly garbage dump. Observing Ernest's miserable life, I couldn't help but think that he was reaping what he sowed. Meanwhile, I found happiness in my new life abroad, overcoming cultural barriers with careful communication and relishing the use of my French skills. The decision to transfer overseas proved to be a rewarding one. Christina, thriving in her career as an illustrator, had been entrusted with significant projects. In our phone conversations, she conveyed her satisfaction, emphasizing the joy of pursuing her passion. As a parent, witnessing my daughter shine in her chosen path brought immense gratification. Despite the challenges and adversities, both Christina and I emerged from the ordeal radiant and fulfilled in our respective lives. The journey, though tumultuous, affirmed that we had made the right choices, and the pursuit of our dreams had led to a brighter and more gratifying existence. My name is Rachel, and currently, I reside in an annex of my in-laws' house with my husband, Stefan. While Stefan lives in the main house with his parents, I am the sole occupant of the annex. Originally, this annex was a small structure built by Stefan's grandfather as a personal project to create a private space. Over time, it has been converted into a living space approximately the size of a room, thanks to my efforts. Initially, Stefan and I lived in a regular apartment for about 3 years after our marriage. However, his parents, who greatly adore him, suddenly expressed their desire to live with Stefan. In response, Stefan, as the dutiful son, declared that he also wanted to be with his parents. Witnessing their emotional reaction, including tears and embraces, I found myself taken aback by the heartfelt scene. Stefan and I first crossed paths at work, where he was my direct subordinate when he joined the company midway through his career. We became a couple after 3 years of dating. Throughout that dating period, he resided at his parents' house. It appears that this prolonged stay fostered a sense of homesickness in both Stefan and his parents. Stefan, who had been pampered at home, seemed to have never been involved in any household chores. After our marriage, when I suggested sharing housework, he appeared reluctant, stating that he had never done any housework before. The problematic aspect was that, despite my intention to divide the chores between us, Stefan seemed to have never considered participating in household tasks himself. I sensed a pattern in all of this. Whenever I attempted to involve him in household chores, Stefan would feign interest for a brief moment, grow disinterested, and eventually say, "This isn't for me. You're better at this, Rachel. You should keep doing it." Both of us were employed, and given my higher position at work, I felt a greater need to share the household responsibilities. However, encouraging him to help often proved to be more time-consuming than handling everything myself. It reached a point where I found it less troublesome to manage everything alone. The dynamics shifted when I transitioned to remote work. Stefan, seemingly surprised to find me at home every day, initially understood the change. He stopped complaining about my altered lifestyle, or so I thought. It became apparent later that he hadn't fully grasped the implications of my decision. Several years into my remote work, Stefan's parents suddenly visited our apartment, expressing a desire to live with him. Witnessing their emotional reunion, I felt a sense of isolation and bewilderment. Eventually, with Stefan's wish to be with his parents, we made the decision to move into their house. Stefan consistently chose locations close to his parents, whether it was for renting an apartment or selecting a job. For me, remote work made the location irrelevant, but his choices required us to uproot ourselves and quit our jobs. Upon settling into his parents' house, Stefan's mother expressed gratitude, saying, "Thank you for taking care of Stefan all this time. From now on, I will take good care of Stefan. Rachel, please take care of everything else." Initially, I interpreted this as a relief from doing housework for Stefan, but soon I realized her intentions were different. My mother-in-law's tasks involved preparing special meals exclusively for Stefan, meticulously laundering only his clothes, ensuring his shoes and belongings stayed immaculate, and purchasing various items specifically for him. As for all other household chores, those for Stefan's parents and myself, including cooking and laundry, were now solely delegated to me despite my ongoing commitment to work. Now, I found myself burdened with the responsibility of not only managing household chores for Stefan's parents and myself, but also maintaining the cleanliness of the larger family house. The prospect left me disheartened. Despite my efforts, this cohabitation seemed to bring happiness only to Stefan and his parents, with no apparent benefits for me. In fact, it felt like my burdens had increased. During one cleaning session, my father-in-law approached me with a request. He looked apologetic as he explained, "Rachel, I have a favor to ask. Could you contribute some money?" Confused, I inquired further. He elaborated, expressing his difficulty in asking Stefan to contribute to household expenses for both of us. Apparently, Stefan had worked hard, and it felt challenging to request financial contributions from him. Stefan and I had previously agreed to share expenses like apartment rent and other living costs. However, Stefan often tried to get me to pay for various items during our shopping trips, including unnecessary ingredients, alcohol, clothes, and accessories. When I resisted, he would act like a child denied a toy, calling me stingy. Despite these financial disagreements, I found comfort in the fact that, apart from these issues, Stefan didn't interfere much with my everyday life. This sense of comfort changed when we started living together, as Stefan's mother began to disrupt my routine. Unlike Stefan, she relentlessly interrupted my work at home, insisting I prioritize household chores. She would barge into my room, pulling on my clothes, making it impossible for me to focus on my work. Frustrated, I discussed the matter with Stefan, anticipating him to take his mother's side. Surprisingly, Stefan listened and promised to talk to his mother. I hoped for a compromise that would consider both our needs. Little did I know that Stefan's idea of a compromise would involve banishing me to the annex, a new, private room. I approached Stefan with a question about the hut, jokingly asking if I could even demolish it and build a new house. To my surprise, he casually replied, "You can even demolish it and build a new house if you want." Taking his words seriously, I promptly began remodeling the hut according to my taste. Engaged in cleaning, renovating, and changing wallpapers, I noticed that Stefan never once showed his face. Despite being married, it became apparent that Stefan had no intention of living in the remodeled hut with me. As I transformed the space, it dawned on me that within the family living trio, I was the only outsider. There were instances when I found myself alone at home, either when they went out to a barbecue restaurant or when I had to work overtime and missed out on shared meals. While these spirited plans were usually concocted by Stefan's mother, it seemed clear that she might have been the driving force behind my exclusion, perhaps hoping I would quickly leave her son. Despite this, Stefan had given me the freedom to do anything with the hut, and I took full advantage of it, engaging in DIY projects, installing new shelves, and personalizing the space. I made it my own. Interestingly, neither Stefan nor his parents ever visited the hut after I moved out. Although they must have been aware of my renovations, it seemed like I was no longer considered a part of their family, and they had no interest in my activities. Living away from the main house, especially without Stefan's mother around, I began to relish the independence, almost like living alone. I found solace in the fact that staying in the hut prevented her from interfering with my work. Installing new locks and enhancing security during the renovation, I ensured that no one, not even Stefan or his parents, could enter without my knowledge. It led me to reconsider if this new separation wasn't such a bad arrangement after all. However, it seemed my mother-in-law had anticipated my feelings. Unable to tolerate the treatment any longer, I found myself at a crossroads, contemplating my next move. As I settled into the renovated cabin, my mother-in-law's desperation to drive me out became palpable. Her petty harassment started with leaving trash in front of my cabin on garbage day instead of at the collection site. Sometimes, she would host barbecues in the garden without extending an invitation, intentionally wafting the smell of grilled meat towards my cabin. Despite her mild attempts, I couldn't help but smile at her futile efforts to push me away. Then, one day, she summoned me to the main house under the pretense of leftover meat and potatoes. Sensing there was more to it, I went along. Upon arrival, only she was present, and she placed a single piece of paper on the living room table, a divorce paper. It was clear that the real reason she called me was to present this document. If his mother instructed Stefan to submit it, he would do so without hesitation. All that remained was for me to agree, and Stefan and I could be divorced simply by submitting the paper to the city court. With a proud expression, his mother asserted, "Isn't it about time you gave up? There's no reason for you and Stefan to stay married anymore. Get out, you freeloading, unemployed woman." I was taken aback by her audacity, but her certainty in her plan only fueled my determination. Thrilled by the prospect of freedom, I eagerly asked to take the divorce paper, stating, "I'm going to the city court right now. Thank you so much." My mother-in-law, who had likely expected me to resist divorce, was left dumbfounded by my unexpected response. Having submitted the divorce paper at the city court, I wasted no time in packing my belongings. Feeling it was necessary to inform Stefan's mother about the divorce, I headed to the main house and informed her that the process had been successful. Regarding the cabin I renovated, I assured her that I would leave it as is, and she was free to demolish it or use it as she pleased. My positive attitude about leaving surprised even my mother-in-law, who, though seeming happy about my departure, wished me luck as I packed. On the day of my departure, Stefan and his father, seemingly realizing that I was truly leaving, expressed concern, asking, "Are you really going? What will we do without Rachel?" I smiled and thanked them for letting me use the cabin. I explained that since there was no point in being married anymore, and we were now divorced, it was time for me to move on. As I organized my belongings, I completed my move to a luxury apartment, a change I had been arranging for. Not long after settling into my new apartment, my mother-in-law called me awkwardly, saying, "Rachel, I need to ask you something." Cheerfully, I responded, "What's up? How's the cabin I'm using right now?" She then inquired about money, mentioning that Stefan had told her I was giving his father $33,000 a month. Confirming that it was true, I explained that despite her earlier accusation of being an unemployed freeloader, I was indeed working. She seemed surprised, thinking I had quit my job. I clarified that I hadn't quit but left the company to become the president of a new company, setting up a remote work system. Her reaction was one of disbelief, and I sighed, realizing that even Stefan was unaware of my promotion. Considering his attitude since we started living together, it seemed he never truly thought of himself as a husband. When asked about my earnings, including my side job, I nonchalantly mentioned it was roughly around $2 million. I may have exaggerated a bit with the $2 million figure. It's just a hassle to explain the exact figures. With that much money, could you lend us some? Actually, Father was laid off, and he kept it hidden. We've been managing somehow with the $3,000 you've been giving us. Neither Stefan nor I knew about it. It all made sense to me now. My father-in-law's words about it being pitiful to ask his son for money were just a pretense to get me to pay. He probably assumed I had money due to my superior position at our former company, and as a result, sweetly scammed me out of $3,000 a month under the guise of living expenses. In the end, I didn't mind too much since it allowed me to live peacefully in that quiet cabin. Well, I'm divorced from Stefan now, so I don't have any connection with your family, right? When I asserted this, my mother-in-law pleaded, "That's not true. To me and to Stefan, you're still family. Come back to us." I immediately declined, recognizing the potential for being used again. Stepping back into a relationship with Stefan would bring me no benefits. We were now complete strangers, and I found it uncomfortable for them to keep calling me family. Besides, they were the ones who drove me out in the first place. I'm really enjoying my life alone now. It's pretty much the same as when I was married, mostly living alone. The difference is, back then, I didn't spend money on myself, and $3,000 was taken from me every month. I prefer my current life much better. Goodbye, then. I ended the call without hesitation, not understanding why they thought I would return. For my mother-in-law, it must have been a last-ditch effort. In fact, Stefan's salary wasn't that great, and he had a habit of saying, "I can't do it," and passing work to others. This trait, displayed in both our personal life and at the office, left him deemed unreliable, and he remained a regular employee without any salary increase. On top of that, with his father laid off and his mother being a housewife, they couldn't maintain their large house and ended up selling it. Now the three of them are living in the cabin I renovated. While it's just right for one person, it must be quite uncomfortable for three people in that cramped space. Since then, I haven't thought about them and continue to live peacefully. Why are you ignoring me? I've decided not to engage with strangers. I understand. I'll continue living with my in-laws. They completely ignore me. I expected it from my mother-in-law, but I never imagined my father-in-law would treat me this way. There was a reason why the once kind in-laws had changed. It was because of my sister-in-law, who disliked me. With her return, our peaceful life together was completely upended. Don't regret it, okay? You think I'm going to regret this? Think again, jerk. I packed my bags and left my in-laws' house. Sure enough, just 3 days after I left, chaos broke out in their household. I met my husband at my workplace. He was in sales and frequently visited my office. I was his main contact. As we spent more time in meetings and discussions, I grew fond of him. He was a caring and kind man, tall and not necessarily handsome in the conventional sense, but he exuded a charismatic vibe. He was popular, but for some reason, he said he liked me, and we began dating. When we talked, he mentioned growing up in a typical family with parents and a sister. I lost my parents in an accident when I was young and grew up in an orphanage. It was a complex issue for me, but when we started dating, I quickly shared my background with him. He responded, "That must have been tough, but don't worry, I'll always be there for you." Soon after, he proposed. From the beginning, my husband intended our relationship to head towards marriage and quickly introduced me to his parents. During the introduction, I told them about growing up in the orphanage. They listened attentively and reassured me that it wouldn't matter in our marriage. It made me very happy. Besides, they told me that being raised in an orphanage had nothing to do with being their daughter-in-law, which truly made me happy. Only my sister-in-law, being very attached to her brother, seemed taken aback, asking, "You grew up in an orphanage?" My husband had to reprimand her. In retrospect, she probably disliked me from our first meeting. I didn't give it much thought at that time, thinking we had just met. Before our marriage, my husband and I discussed moving in with his parents. We seriously considered it. But in the end, I decided not to quit my job. It turns out my husband was set to be transferred soon. I thought about quitting my job to move with him, but my career was going well, and I had just been given direct reports. We discussed it and decided he would move on his own after getting married. I wanted to savor that newly feeling for a bit. I even casually thought about visiting my husband during the long weekends for a little vacation feel. The idea of moving in with the in-laws so soon after marriage was a bit daunting, but my husband probably felt more at ease living with his parents. Plus, to put his ever-worried mother at ease, he probably wanted us to live together. Having lost my parents at a young age, I had always yearned for a family, so living with them wasn't an entirely unappealing idea. Plus, my in-laws had always treated me kindly, and I had grown fond of them. Balancing work and my duties as a daughter-in-law was challenging, but having a family made me happy and fulfilled. One day, my father-in-law approached me with an unexpected request. This would mark the beginning of the unraveling of our seemingly happy cohabitation. It was a time when my overly anxious mother-in-law, who tended to act domineering towards my father-in-law, was out shopping. I was about to start cleaning on my day off when my father-in-law asked to speak with me. "What's the matter?" "Well, I don't want my wife to know, but I'm taking a leave from work." A leave. He explained that he had been having problems with his boss and coworkers, and his health had deteriorated to the point where he had no choice but to take a leave. My mother-in-law is a good person, but she's always anxious and a bit neurotic, living with them. I began to notice her neurotic tendencies and how my father-in-law tiptoed around her to avoid upsetting her. He had always been on the slimmer side, but now that I think about it, he did seem to have lost some weight recently. It would be nice if my mother-in-law was the type to genuinely worry about my father-in-law's weight loss. However, when he had previously taken a sick day due to a cold, she remarked, "A cold. All of your colleagues are at executive levels by now. It's because you're always taking days off claiming bad health or colds. That's why you don't get promoted." Rather than showing concern, she was the kind to give him a hard kick in the pants. He probably tried his best to push through, no matter how poor his health was. However, his condition worsened, and he secretly took multiple sick days to visit the hospital. He was both mentally and physically at his limit. With his frequent early departures, tardiness, and absences, there was talk of him possibly taking a temporary leave from work. But my father-in-law didn't want to upset my mother-in-law under any circumstances. If he were to suggest taking a leave of absence, it's obvious that she would explode in anger. Besides, my father-in-law's salary wasn't that great, and he depended on his overtime pay, so taking a leave would mean he'd be making significantly less. If he told my husband, he'd probably end up telling my mother-in-law. So he approached me, asking if I could help with the living expenses. "If I suggest taking a leave, she might even divorce me," he said. Hearing those words from him felt like a punch to the gut. I deeply appreciated my in-laws, who had warmly welcomed me without discriminating against my background of being raised in an institution. Determined to be supportive, I made up my mind to help him out during this tough time. "Understood. I'll transfer money into your account every month. Please use it for living expenses. I'm truly sorry. I'll do my best to recover quickly and return to work." "Thank you so much," he said. After that, my father-in-law pretended to go to work as usual, while I transferred money into his bank account, which he used for living expenses. My mother-in-law, being rather carefree, didn't meticulously check her bank statements or maintain a household ledger, so she never noticed my transfers. Pretending to go to work, he would visit a mental clinic or take walks in the serene mountains. Gradually, his complexion seemed to improve. I thought he might be returning to work soon, but then an unexpected event occurred. After a marital spat, my sister-in-law returned to her parental home. Ah, there's nothing like being home. I thought I'd go crazy if I had to stay with that idiot husband of mine. I'll be staying here for a while. Please prepare meals for me too. I was well aware from our first meeting that my sister-in-law didn't like me. During our family's first meeting, my husband was really upset because she was visibly displeased. During the wedding, she maintained a sour expression throughout and even told me point blank, "My brother looks so good, but you? It would have been better if he married someone prettier." She openly looked down on me, raised in an institution, saying it was embarrassing that I didn't have parents to present at the wedding. However, she got married earlier than us and had already moved out, so I thought our interactions would be limited. That's why I thought living with them would be okay. If she had been living at home, I wouldn't have even considered moving in, knowing the daily jibes I would receive. Still, I thought this visit was just temporary due to her marital problems and expected her to leave within a few days. Despite her stern behavior towards my father-in-law, my mother-in-law was never harsh towards me. Even if my sister-in-law had made snide comments, I believed my mother-in-law would have defended me. But I was wrong. One day when I returned from work, something seemed off about my mother-in-law's behavior. Is something wrong? She seemed distant, not engaging in her usual conversation. When I asked, she responded, "Did you know you've been bad-mouthing me behind my back?" "What? I've never said anything bad about you. You've always been kind to me, and I'm truly grateful. Why would I badmouth you? You've been playing the good daughter-in-law card all this time, but you've been bad-mouthing me on the side. Fine, whatever." Saying this, she left the room. In the hallway, my sister-in-law was smirking. "Looks like you've fallen out of favor. Did your true colors show? Being raised in an institution, your background really does show, huh? It's better not to badmouth people, you know." "I haven't said anything bad about her." "Oh, the neighbors seem to have heard it. After I returned home after such a long time, they told me that you've been constantly criticizing her." "What? Who are these neighbors?" "Look, it's been a while since I got married and moved out, so I've kind of forgotten the names of the neighbors. I've never said any of those things. Stop making things up." "Oh my, how rude, Mom. She's calling me a liar and bullying me." Saying this, she entered my mother-in-law's room. After that, my sister-in-law's malicious behavior escalated. She claimed I told her to sleep in the corridor and take the last bath because she's just a lodger. She complained to my mother-in-law about every little thing. Every time, I had to explain that I hadn't said or done any such thing. However, my mother-in-law seemed to be completely taken in by my sister-in-law's words and seemed to be under her influence. My sister-in-law continued her day, making me wonder if she intended to stay indefinitely. With these worries, I headed home with a heavy heart. I'm home. Previously, my mother-in-law would cheerfully greet me with "Welcome back." Now, there was silence. "I'll get dinner ready," I said, stepping into the living room. I was shocked. Normally, my sister-in-law would nag me to prepare dinner quickly, but now my mother-in-law, father-in-law, and sister-in-law were all eating sushi together. Surprised, my sister-in-law said, "Oh, it looks like someone who isn't family is home. You're not thinking of having sushi, are you?" Without even glancing at me, my mother-in-law continued eating while watching TV. "If you wanted sushi, you should have said so." I rushed home after shopping. No one asked for that. "Hey, Mom, Dad, I went out with my friends during the day and got some delicious pudding. Let's eat together." As my sister-in-law said that without paying any mind to me, the three of them started eating the pudding. I was exhausted from work and didn't have the energy to get upset, so I went to my room without eating. The next day, my sister-in-law said she was going out with friends and asked me to drive her to the station. I obviously declined since it was a weekday and I had work. Even if we were headed in the same direction, it would be a completely different route, and she wanted to leave close to noon. There's no way I could take her. "Just take a day off. It's fine. Your cute little sis-in-law just wants a ride." She never had the chance to relax and hang out after she got married, right? Can't you be a bit kinder to her? Now, with all due respect, didn't you go out with friends last night after getting a late-night call? Seems like you've been going out almost every day since you came home. I have work. Please take the bus or train. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law were murmuring in the background, but I was fed up. I left for work. However, that night, the defining event that made me decide to leave this house took place. I got held up at work and returned home after picking up some groceries, expecting to be berated. It had started raining by the time I left the office, and it was pouring so hard that even getting in and out of the car, I was drenched. I wondered what nasty trick would be played on me tonight. But when I got home, the three of them were eating takeout just like the day before, no greeting, acting as if they didn't even notice my return. But I've grown used to this treatment. I glanced toward the courtyard from the hallway and saw something placed in the center of the garden. Taking a closer look, it was my belongings. A designer bag I bought with my first paycheck, shoes that were my first birthday gift from my husband, and even my computer that I used for work at home was soaked. As I was in shock, my sister-in-law said with a smirk, "I felt so grossed out having a stranger's things in the house. I threw them out, flaunting a designer bag like that. How arrogant of you." Neither of my in-laws said a word about her outrageous behavior. Why didn't you stop her? Have I done something to you? Do you really believe her lies that I've been bad-mouthing you, bullying her? Aren't you mad at her for what she did? My mother-in-law avoided my gaze, staying silent. Why won't you say anything? I can't talk to strangers. I can't be friendly with someone who's not family. My mother-in-law wouldn't even look at me. My sister-in-law grinned, waiting for my rebuttal. Wait, where's my father-in-law? I'm the one supporting him during his time off. I'm the one helping out with the finances in this house. Sure, I did it out of gratitude, but shouldn't he defend me now? Surely, he'd be on my side. Hoping for support, I looked at him, but he walked past me without a word and went into his room. That was the breaking point for me. I see, I've had enough. Oh, aren't you mad? I'm sorry. To be honest, I never liked you from the beginning, you know? Being raised in an institution and all. Just don't regret this, like I would, loser. I packed my things and prepared to leave immediately. Seeing me in this state, only my father-in-law seemed flustered since he was the one depending on me financially. Still, he didn't try to stop me or defend me. I was completely done with his apathy. My husband's work assignment was quite far away, but I wanted to leave this house as soon as possible. I quickly got in my car and drove to him. I never once confided in my husband about all this. I doubt my mother-in-law told him about my sister-in-law coming back home. If he had known, he would have contacted me, knowing I don't get along with her. But my husband never mentioned anything about my sister-in-law in his calls or messages. I never felt anything off about my husband's behavior, but perhaps he's being manipulated by her, fed lies about various things. Even now, as I head to him, he might treat me with the same cold attitude as them. My heart was exhausted, feeling so suspicious even towards my husband, whom I trust most. If he's of the same mind and attitude as them, maybe divorce is the only option. That's how deeply distressed I felt. When I arrived at his out-of-state apartment, he hadn't returned yet, perhaps busy since it was the end of the month. As I waited, my husband energetically entered the apartment, maybe having noticed the lights. What if you were coming? You should have told me. I would have come home earlier. What a surprise, no, just seeing your face. He immediately greeted me with a radiant smile. The relief of seeing him happy to see me combined with the humiliation from my in-laws' house made a mixture of emotions flood out. And I broke down crying. What happened? Did I say something wrong? Seriously, what's going on? It seemed my husband had no idea about the treatment I received at his parents' house. I composed myself, knowing I had to clearly explain everything to him, and began to recount everything. How I've been financially assisting his father who took medical leave, without telling his wife that his sister had returned and was now staying at their parents' home. That she'd been feeding his mother lies about me, turning her cold towards me, how they referred to me as an outsider, how they ignored me, left my belongings out in the rain and ruined them. Through tears and pauses, I told him everything. Finally, I made it clear that I had no intention of ever returning to that house, and that if he couldn't agree with me on this, I'd want a divorce. My husband apologized for being too engrossed in his work and not checking in on me more often, regretting his family's behavior towards me. Of course, he told me I don't have to go back to his parents' house or even speak to them. Even if I ever forgave them, he was adamant about cutting ties with his parents and sister. He also promised not to provide any financial aid to his father anymore. That night, I felt truly relieved. The tension I had been holding melted away, and I had a peaceful sleep by his side. After that, I never returned to my in-laws' house. While commuting from my husband's out-of-state place was not feasible, I had already approached my company about working remotely. Since my sister-in-law and mother-in-law started treating me harshly, my job doesn't necessarily require being in the office, and many of my colleagues and superiors also work remotely. While I had to visit the office a few times a month, several colleagues lived even further away, so switching to remote work wasn't a problem. I hadn't truly experienced married life since moving in with his family and dealing with my sister-in-law's bullying, but now we could finally live like newlyweds. Just as I was setting up my remote workstation, predictably, my sister-in-law contacted me. It turned out the day after I left their house was the day my father-in-law was supposed to get paid. My mother-in-law usually withdraws a certain amount and transfers it to their household account on payday. But this time she couldn't. Until now, I have been supplementing my father-in-law's reduced salary due to his time off. Upon checking their balance, my mother-in-law confronted him, and he confessed that I had been helping them financially. "Hey, why didn't you tell me you were covering the living expenses?" He told me not to, saying he didn't want you to know, so I kept it a secret. Anyway, we're running out of money for living expenses, and there's no one to cook or do laundry. The room is a mess. As his wife, you need to come back and take care of these things and transfer money quickly. How heartless. I told you, didn't I? I don't regret this. I have no intention of going back to that house or continuing as your maid. Why should I help people who hate me, destroy my belongings, and treat me like this? Aren't you his wife? Without your help, we can't pay the electricity or gas bills. We can't even go shopping. That's why I said it. I'm an outsider, so it's none of my business, right? I hung up, ignoring my sister-in-law's ranting. She and my mother-in-law kept pestering me with calls and messages, but I ignored all of them. Even after my husband returned from work, the persistent calls from them continued. When my husband answered, he told them firmly, "I'll never forgive you for how you treated her, and I'm never sending her back to you. I'm not coming back either. I don't consider you my family anymore. Stay away from my wife, or you'll regret it." Given that my sister-in-law adored her brother, and my mother-in-law heavily relied on him, they were probably in shock. A few days later, I received a call from my father-in-law. He said living with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law was becoming unbearable, and he begged me to continue the financial assistance. I'm still grateful for them accepting me, who grew up in an orphanage when they married. But they didn't support me in my time of need, despite all the financial help I've provided. I don't owe them anything. Why should I help those who joined others in ignoring me? I'll never assist you again. And with that, I ended the call. Later on, my relentless mother-in-law and sister-in-law audaciously showed up at my workplace. Since I was already working remotely and had a bad feeling about them, I'd informed my company about the situation. The security was alerted immediately. Apparently, they caused a scene, demanding that the company force me to send money back home. Upon hearing this, my husband said, "Report them to the police." Colleagues at my company were supportive, saying, "I can't believe you lived with those people. Focus on your remote work with your husband." As for my in-laws, my father-in-law's health deteriorated under the pressure from my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, and he'd eventually resigned. My sister-in-law tried to return to her husband's family, but he refused to take her back. The small town quickly caught wind of her drama at my workplace. Given the embarrassment, there was an uproar at her in-laws' place. The original reason for the fight between my sister-in-law and her husband was her affair. This incident added to their issues, leading to an immediate decision to divorce. Without a home, my in-laws and sister-in-law moved to a cheap apartment, managing to get by on part-time jobs. As for my husband and me, we're finally living peaceful days, feeling mentally and physically fulfilled. Recently, we found out we're expecting a child and are overjoyed. We're looking forward to the day we meet our baby, cherishing our time together. My request for approval was promptly denied. It would be fine if it's the storage shed. I exclaimed, "Don't make a fool of me. Our house is fairly spacious. If the rooms were tidied up, there would be no problem having my father live with us. Truly, my husband's feelings for me and my family are less than that of a pet. Well then, I will sincerely clean up the storage shed and renovate it. Even the storage shed can be used just like a regular room if it's clean. There's meaning in living with my father now," I determined. Aaron, however, seemed unenthusiastic. "There's no way I'm doing such a thing. Why do I have to renovate for your father?" I recalled the major renovation we did to ensure my mother-in-law, who visits sometimes, would not have trouble staying over. We even installed a bathroom and toilet, similar to a hotel. I won't rely on such a demon-like man anymore. I made a decision. My name is Vivian Westhill, 52 years old. I help with the company my husband runs. My son, Matthew, has left home, and it's just the two of us living together. My mother-in-law sometimes comes over, but since her house is nearby, she doesn't live with us. Reflecting on how I met my husband nearly 30 years ago, I shared, "I hate to say it myself, but I was famous for being good-looking in my hometown. My mother passed away in a traffic accident when I was in middle school, and I was helping each other out with my father. Although I was invited out by many men, they were nothing but a hindrance to me. I had a dream of becoming an accountant and was working hard towards that. Despite my popularity, I had a boyfriend of the same age. We would secretly call each other and go out to eat after part-time. I had no intention of dating anyone else. The only people I could let my guard down with were him and my father. He alone appreciated not my appearance, but my seriousness and true strength, among other aspects of my personality and way of thinking. I think we would have become a couple even if I wasn't the same appearance. That was the kind of relationship we had. However, everything changed one day when I returned home to find an unfamiliar family of 3 in my house. Seeing me, my father made a troubled face. I must have been more surprised. A known family introduced themselves. "We are the West Hills." Hearing the name West Hill made it click. A famous rich family in town. I wondered why they were in my house. "Welcome home, Vivian. Mr. West Hill here wants to take you as his wife." Shocked, I protested. "A wife? Marriage? What are you talking about? I had never seen these 3 before. Everyone knows they hold significant influence in town as a wealthy family. Yet the talk of me becoming a bride was unbelievable. Nice to meet you, Vivian. Our Aaron has fallen for you at first sight. He insists on having you as his wife." My would-be father-in-law began speaking. Despite feeling unreal, they didn't disappear, and I was told, "Take your time and talk it over with your father. We'll come back in a week to hear your answer." As they left, I pondered, could our fate be decided in just a week? It didn't seem real. I thought things like this only happened in dramas, and I couldn't believe it was happening to me. Stunned, I watched as the 3 of them left. "Dad, what's this about a debt? What's your relation with those people?" My father turned to me with a pale face, drained of all blood. "Vivian, I'm sorry. It's true. I was lonely and started drinking and gambling. Before I knew it, the money was gone, and I began borrowing to cover it. Everything I heard since coming home was beyond my capacity to accept." "Debts? Why didn't you tell me? I understand you were lonely after Mom suddenly passed away, but having a debt." I couldn't think calmly, naturally. I couldn't even talk about it calmly. This was indeed out of the blue. As far as I could remember, my father never got drunk or angry from losing at gambling. I didn't even know. Mr. Weshill invited me and introduced me to a place with Mr. Weshill's face. We could drink on a tab, and I didn't even know how much the bill was accumulating. The same thing with gambling. He let me buy lottery tickets together, and it just piled up. My father is truly a good person, not knowing how to doubt people. It must have been easy for someone like a scam artist. They must have been scheming from the start to trap my father and have their way with me. Interrupting my thoughts, I questioned, "Hold on a second. What happens to you if I don't marry their son?" In desperation, I pondered if there was any alternative. The looming threat of being pursued by debt collectors or sent to a work camp left me trembling. I clung to a shred of hope, suggesting, "There's no such thing as work camps these days. Can't you just keep working hard to pay it off?" My father's response was disheartening. "Sorry, Vivian, that's impossible. Debt collectors might start contacting my workplace. I might not be able to work anymore." Feeling completely cornered and with no more options to explore, I decided it was enough. There was nothing more to discuss. Despite wanting to vent my feelings of frustration, humiliation, and anger, I couldn't bring myself to do that to my father, who had always taken care of me. I packed my bags and made the immediate decision to go to the West Hill family. There was no use worrying about it. Making this decision wasn't easy, but considering the increasing interest on the debt, I couldn't cling to my home any longer. Marrying Aaron seemed to be the only way to resolve this, and before I could change my mind, I quietly left the house. That night, I arrived at the West Hills home and boldly knocked on the front door. "You're early. Seems like you're blinded by money, just like everyone else," Aaron remarked. Frustration boiled within me, and I wanted to scream that I didn't want any money and wasn't unhappy because I was poor. But his words treated me like a possession, objectifying, and disgusting. Leaving everything behind, I looked forward to being with him from now on, offering a forced greeting as I entered the West Hill household. After that, everything progressed in a whirlwind. Betrayed by my trusted father and breaking up with my beloved boyfriend, it felt like all my emotions had disappeared. The grand wedding with a local famous person, attended by many, blurred in my memory. The only vivid image was my father's haggard look, erasing my resentment towards him. Accepting this as my fate, I decided to change my outlook and enjoy my married life. Little did I know, that was just the beginning of a harrowing experience. Responsibilities piled up, from housework to assisting with the family business, and the pressure to have children took a toll on my mental state. My mother-in-law constantly nagged, and my husband's initial kindness turned into indifference. It was far from the sweet married life I had imagined. "You're completely useless. A woman from the club would be better. Just quietly do your job and chores," my husband declared, treating me like a housemaid. When I became pregnant, even severe morning sickness didn't evoke sympathy. "You're getting fat. Just do your chores and work properly. I don't know why I married you." I gave up on being acknowledged in this home. A wife from a poor family would never be seen as more than a servant. Frustrating as it was, for the sake of my unborn child, I had to endure. Eventually, I gave birth to a boy, but my husband, now with an heir, hardly ever came home. When he did, he reeked of strong perfume and alcohol, evidence of his time spent at clubs. However, my primary focus was on raising my child, so my husband's absence brought a sense of relief. Matthew, my son, grew up healthy and was easy to raise, despite my mother-in-law's persistent annoyance, claiming that Aaron would have been a better choice. I preferred Matthew not turning into a worthless man. My kind-hearted son aspired to become a doctor, and when he left for university, I felt a void in my heart. To fill that emptiness, I decided to dedicate myself more to my work. Around that time, my father-in-law, who had treated me as a human being, passed away. My mother-in-law moved to a condo near the downtown area, enjoying the inheritance from my father-in-law. With the loss of the person who had supported and cared for me like my own father, I began to miss my father. Taking advantage of my husband's indifference, I started talking to my father again, just like old times. Though it was challenging to speak without making my father feel guilty, one day he looked serious. When I asked what was wrong, he said in a resigned tone that he was diagnosed with malignant lymphoma and had only 6 months to live. I was utterly shocked and couldn't believe it. "No way, Dad, that can't be. You're so lively. It's impossible that you only have half a year left, just when we could finally be like a father and daughter again. I can't bear the thought of never seeing you again." Despite my emotional plea, my father smiled kindly and nodded. Wanting to ensure he wouldn't be alone, I decided to ask my husband to let him live with us in our spacious home. I'm not ready to give up, but at least I don't want him to be alone. My father expressed happiness hearing those words and left with a gentle smile. For the first time since getting married, I decided to confront my husband that night. As usual, he came home drunk with the smell of perfume. Seeing me awake and waiting for him, he looked startled. "What's the matter? Don't tell me you want some affection." It seemed he hadn't changed his view on women being objects. I looked straight at him and said, "Aaron, I have something important to talk about. My father has been diagnosed with terminal cancer and has only 6 months to live. I want him to live with us in this house. Of course, I won't let it be a bother to you. We can just use one of the vacant rooms in the house. That's okay, right? You will listen to such a request, won't you?" Since my husband was hardly at home, there should have been no reason to object. I took it for granted that he would agree. But the unexpected reply was, "Just leave that half-dead old man alone. I'm not going to let someone like that into the house. It'll ruin the atmosphere." "Absolutely not. If you want to do that, you can leave. I have no intention of living with a sick person." My request was flatly denied, and I felt like I had fallen into a gaping hole in the ground. In my heart, I screamed, "If you want, the shed is fine. Don't mock me. Our house is quite large, and there is no problem if my father moves in. After cleaning up a room, we can live without facing each other. My husband really holds feelings for me and my family that are less than that for a pet. Well then, I will seriously clean and renovate the storage shed. If the storage shed is cleaned, it can be used just like a normal room. There is meaning in living with my father now." However, my husband remained adamant, saying, "There's no way I'm doing such a thing. Why do I have to renovate for your father?" Recalling the major renovation I did for my mother-in-law, I decided not to rely on such a demon-like man anymore. Since then, I worked more than ever and visited my father when I had the time. Some days he seemed to be doing well, and other days he seemed to be doing badly. I couldn't feel alive every day unless I saw my father's face. I was only praying for my father's illness to be cured. Miraculously, my prayers seemed to be heard, as my father was still alive after 6 months. A bright light seemed to shine, and I started to live positively, little by little. About half a year after my father's confession, my husband came back with a pale face. I sensed that something serious had happened because he had never come back early since we got married. "Sit down. I have important news. I was told that I have cancer, and my life expectancy is short." Come to think of it, my husband had been looking pale lately. I thought it was due to drinking too much alcohol or lack of sleep. Strangely, I was not shocked. It was completely someone else's problem. Besides, everyone should take care of themselves. "You were like, leave that half-dead man alone, right? I'll do just as you said. If you want me to leave, I'm leaving. Oh yes, I found a lawyer for our divorce matters." I left the room without looking back. I decided to leave suddenly, but I did not regret it at all. You don't have a penny, do you? Where do you think you're going, leaving this house? You won't be able to live a luxurious life like you have been. You have been living on everything I have worked hard for, you inhuman. Does he still think that I have been living in this house for money? I had been subjected to brainwashing through my mother-in-law and endured verbal abuse from my husband, believing that I needed to stay and protect this house. However, since learning about my father's terminal diagnosis 6 months ago, I woke up to the realization that I couldn't continue living like this. During this time, I mentally prepared myself for divorce, ready to leave the house at any moment. My husband continued to shout something in the background, but it no longer concerned me. I never aspired for a luxurious life. All I needed was the ability to eat 3 meals a day and a place to sleep. I returned to my room, packed only the essentials into my suitcase, and left the house. Whether my husband faced trouble or not, it didn't matter to me. I promptly sent the email I had drafted, resigning from my position to the company's president. I aimed to settle everything related to my husband and the West Hill family, which I had been supporting for nearly 30 years. In fact, since discussing my father's situation half a year ago, I had been in contact with a divorce specialist lawyer recommended by the company's advisory lawyer. I shared everything about our marriage, starting from events before our marriage. The lawyer listened quietly, nodding in understanding. When I mentioned that I had been working for the family business without pay, the lawyer was genuinely surprised. It would amount to hundreds of thousands of dollars in unpaid salary. After finishing my story, he immediately commented that the divorce should be straightforward. I had also gathered evidence of my husband's faults, including photos of emails from other women and notes documenting serious moral harassment. Additionally, I had recorded his verbally abusive remarks on my smartphone. While that evidence was sufficient, the lawyer also provided photos of my husband's infidelity for free. He assured me that everything would go well, even if I didn't take further action. He urged me to feel like I was on a big ship and didn't need to answer the angry calls from my husband, as he would handle everything. I walked with a smile, naturally ignoring the angry calls. Amidst the calls from my husband, there were also calls from my mother-in-law, likely questioning if I planned to abandon everything when my son was in trouble. If her son was in trouble, she should take care of him herself. Although a luxurious room resembling a show home awaited her return to that house, she seemed panicked. The company started by my father-in-law was falling apart without me, who had been a crucial support. The president, who was more of a decoration due to ESS, couldn't steer the company effectively, and things were not going well. Some colleagues had reached out, asking me to come back, but I had no intention of dedicating myself to the company any longer. Despite its local significance, the number of clients would steadily decrease. While I felt sorry for letting my father-in-law's hard-earned company decline, I believed that if my husband and mother-in-law had worked as diligently as him, this wouldn't have happened. My decision to quit might have been different, and my son Matthew might have considered taking over the family business. Furthermore, my husband not only contributed little to the company, but also seemed to constantly engage in inappropriate behavior with female employees, leading to suspicions and resignations. It appears that those women are planning to sue the company for sexual harassment. Now, my husband has to handle the repercussions of the mess he created in his life, and it seems that justice is catching up with him. I desired justice for my husband and mother-in-law, wanting them to face proper consequences so that those who had worked honestly wouldn't be made to look foolish. To add to the turmoil, the company faced accusations of tax evasion by the IRS, discovered accidentally while my lawyer was investigating. Further examination revealed questionable points in the accounts, raising suspicions of my husband's embezzlement. Looking back, it was odd that he had substantial money at his disposal, considering his salary. While assisting with the accounting, I had been indifferent to my husband's financial activities, not realizing the disparity between his income and expenditures. If I had questioned where the excess funds were coming from, I would have understood the truth. In reality, he'd have been squandering the company's money, including my salary that he had transferred to his own account. Kickbacks for orders, bribes for personal gain, tax evasion, and special embezzlement. My husband's crimes were diverse. I couldn't predict whether the court's judgment or his life expectancy would come first, but I desired him to atone for as much as possible. 6 months ago, I began scrutinizing the books, copying them to preserve evidence, and submitting them to the IRS. My prior study to become an accountant proved beneficial in this endeavor. To bridge the financial gap, my husband sold the company to a major corporation and hastily disposed of the large mansion at a bargain. My mother-in-law also sold her condo to meet the IRS obligations and pay me. Now they live together in a small apartment complex, and rumors suggest my husband has several children from affairs, necessitating child support payments. Despite his age, my husband seems to have life insurance, but its adequacy is uncertain. My mother-in-law, previously condescending, now works to cover her son's medical and living expenses. The parent and child should reflect on their actions until the end. Receiving a substantial amount, I purchased a condo in a convenient location. I reunited with my father, who is now recovering, thanks to Matthew's introduction to a renowned doctor. My father had been living with Matthew, saving money for me to free me from financial burdens. Matthew, considering my father more respectable than his own, agreed to my request. Living together until the condo was secured, I chose a place close to Matthew's home. I started working at the law firm that aided me, contributing to corporate cases. Despite not being an accountant, my experience is an asset, and I'm studying to acquire a tax accountant qualification. My husband is serving an actual imprisonment sentence, relieving concerns about money or sustenance. Ironically, my mother-in-law moved into a relative's house, experiencing what it's like to be in need after acting superior for so long. Seeking justice for my mistreatment, I'm astounded by the prevalence of power and sexual harassment in various transactions. I worried about potential job losses due to the company acquisition, but it seems to have worked out for most. As everything falls into place, I savor the happiness that comes from knowing I made the right choices. Returning home from work, I find my father and another man waiting. It's my ex-boyfriend, the person I truly loved. After nearly 30 years, he welcomes me back warmly. My father, who had apologized to him when I escaped from the troubled house, knew about my ex-boyfriend. The three men, including Matthew, were watching over me. Now, I plan to live with these three men whom I genuinely love from the bottom of my heart. Upon glancing at my phone, I noticed a staggering 13 missed calls, all originating from my persistent mother-in-law, Martha. Not again, I thought to myself. Just as I was contemplating this influx of calls, my phone vibrated once more. Answering the call, I was met with Martha's angered voice demanding, "Excuse me, isn't the allowance for this month $3,000 due?" "Excuse me?" I responded, trying to keep my composure. "Send the allowance. This month's payment hasn't been deposited yet." Martha raged on, completely indifferent to my circumstances and solely fixated on her own desires. Fed up with her lack of consideration, even in challenging situations, I reluctantly resorted to my last option. Pulling myself together, I blurted out, "Your son has passed away, so I can no longer send the allowance. My name is Jennifer Smith, 32 years old. I'm a busy working woman at a major financial firm and also a housewife." Reflecting on my past, I reminisced about meeting my beloved husband Mark 2 years ago. We connected through our shared hobbies, and our relationship blossomed quickly. Despite encountering no major quarrels, a significant issue arose in the form of Martha, my mother-in-law. Mark's father had passed away a few years ago, leaving Martha as his sole family. The trouble began when I visited Martha's home to introduce myself before our wedding. Martha greeted me with a displeased expression, remarking, "So, you're Mark's fiancé, huh?" "Yes, my name is Jennifer Miller." To my astonishment, she continued, "You're a rather plain girl. I wonder what Mark sees in you." Uncertain if she was joking or being serious, I was left in shock. Mark, noticing my discomfort, confronted his mother. "Hey, Mom, what's with the sudden harsh words? How can you say such things to the person I chose?" Martha responded, "I'm just trying to choose a suitable woman for you." An argument unfolded between mother and son, leaving the air heavy with tension during my first meeting with Martha. I found myself unable to intervene, even though the atmosphere remained awkward. Eventually, we managed to convey our intention to marry. As we were leaving, Martha called out to Mark, sounding somewhat disgruntled. "Mark, can I have a word? You're going to keep that promise after you get married, right?" What promise? Mark inquired. You know, about the allowance. Ah, that. Yes, I'll be sure to take care of that. Can we not discuss it here, please? Mark replied. While leaving, the tension between my husband and his mother lingered, and the air was thick with discomfort. In the car on the way home, I brought up the conversation Mark had with his mom. Hey, Mark, about the conversation you had with your mom as we were leaving. Yeah, I should have told you about it, Jennifer. I heard something about an allowance. After my dad passed away, I've been sending money to my mom every month. How much? I asked. $2,000. $2,000. I couldn't help but raise my voice in surprise. Mark sighed deeply and explained. Actually, my mom has a debt from a casino a long time ago. She's still paying it off, and because her health isn't great these days, she spends a lot of time at home. But she still needs money to live on, right? But $2,000? Isn't that a bit too much? If I try to lower the amount, she keeps calling me over and over. And no matter what, a mother is still a mother. I worry about her living alone, Mark reasoned. I understood that Mark was genuinely devoted to his mother. Since his father passed away, Martha had been the only family he had left. Regardless of her character, she was still his beloved mother. 2 months after our wedding, during my lunch break, I received a call from Martha on my smartphone. When I answered, she began to speak in a cheerful tone. Jennifer, long time no see. Can we chat for a bit? Yes. What can I do for you? I asked. Well, I was hoping you could start sending me money, Martha said. I was taken aback and struggled to find words. However, Martha seemed excited to continue the conversation. You mentioned before that you're working for a financial company, right? That means you have a good salary, doesn't it? Not exactly. What, are you lying to avoid giving me money? That's not what I mean, I replied. Then what is it? But Martha, you're still receiving financial support from Mark, aren't you? I asked. In defiance, Martha responded, So what? Jennifer sternly stated what she felt Martha was not appreciating. Martha, receiving $2,000 in monthly support is a big deal, and yet you're asking for more. Really? You think so? If you were to send me an additional $1,000, I could avoid burdening Mark. What do you mean by that? I asked. Well, I have Mark as a guarantor for my debts. If I fail to make payments, the debt collectors will go after him. Do you understand? Martha explained. But aren't you using part of Mark's $2,000 to pay back the debt? I inquired. I'm short. I haven't told Mark, but I have a significant amount of debt, Martha confessed. From her tone, it was apparent that this was a fact even her husband was unaware of. Having children in the future would increase our expenses. In addition to that, taking over Martha's debt was not an easy task. However, if Martha's payments fall behind and the debt falls onto Mark, the interest will likely have accumulated significantly by that time. If I refuse to send money, it would eventually become a problem for my husband as well. Thinking along those lines, I reluctantly agreed to Martha's proposal. All right, I'll start sending you money. Really? Good, Jennifer. I knew you would say that. The total, with Mark's contribution, will be $3,000. But this means you can pay off your debt, right? Yes, of course. I should be able to pay it all off in about a year. You promise, right? You'll make sure to pay off all your debts. I get it. So I'll be expecting it from this month onwards. Martha concluded the call abruptly. Physical exhaustion from work combined with this emotional burden only added to my stress. $1,000 a month, that's going to be rough. But it's also to prevent future problems for us. After all, if Martha can't make a living, it will upset Mark as well. That night, I promptly reported the matter to my husband. He told me I didn't have to do this, but I had already given my word to Martha, and it was a decision made for our future well-being. Mark expressed his gratitude and understanding, even as he maintained a sorry expression throughout. Time flew by, and 2 years have passed since then. The financial aid we thought would end in a year is still ongoing, and even now, we are transferring $3,000 every month to Martha. What's more, about 2 months ago, Mark fell ill and has been unable to go to work. He's on sick leave, so he's receiving disability benefits, but it's a mere pittance compared to his previous salary. Last month, I managed to transfer $3,000 to Martha from my savings, but it would be very challenging if this situation continues. Unbelievably, Martha has not once come to visit her sick son. We have informed her of his hospitalization, but she doesn't show up to see him and only contacts me to ask, "You're still sending the money, right?" I was so furious that I decided to address the issue with Mark. Mark, listen, don't you think it's wrong that Martha is only concerned about money, even though you're in such a state? We need to think seriously about what to do going forward. Yeah, I've been thinking the same thing. I don't want to put more strain on you, Jennifer. This month, too, she's been bombarding me with calls and messages, asking if we've sent the money yet. Are you serious? How can she only think about money when her own son is sick? Mark expressed his anger towards his mother, his face slightly worn. Then, as if he had an idea, Mark exclaimed, "That's it," and wore a sly grin. What is it, Mark? Well, this is our last resort. I've come up with something good. For your mom. What? I was curious but cautious. Mark suggested a plan that I could never have imagined. Although it could be called inappropriate, it seemed to be the only way to make Martha understand. A few weeks later, Mark was discharged from the hospital. Martha didn't reply to any of our messages, so we didn't inform her about Mark's discharge. In the last 2 weeks, Martha had been relentlessly demanding money, displaying no concern for her son's well-being. While Mark and I were enjoying a cup of tea, a message came in on my phone. Upon checking, I found 13 missed calls from Martha again. As I thought, my phone vibrated again. It was another call from Martha. "Hello," I answered and turned on the speaker microphone so that Mark could hear. Martha started shouting right away. "Listen, where's the $3,000 for this month?" "Excuse me, that's right. The money for this month hasn't been transferred yet," I replied. "Do you realize Mark is now? I don't care if he's in the hospital or whatever. It's none of my business. You're working at a good place, right? You must have plenty of savings. Hurry up and transfer it here," Martha shouted angrily. Eventually, she said something unbelievable. "Listen, since you married Mark, if he can't pay, you have to pay me. Understand? If you refuse, I'll make you the guarantor. Got it?" At that moment, something inside me snapped. She was displaying her desires openly without considering our situation at all. I had reached my breaking point with her. She didn't even try to reflect on her own actions. Now, I had no choice but to resort to the last resort. I firmly declared into my smartphone, "Mark has passed away. I can't send you any more money." At these words, Martha blurted out in bafflement, "What?" Yes, this was the last resort that my husband suggested. Lie to Martha about Mark's death and observe her reaction. If she showed any sign of sadness, if she reflected on her behavior and apologized, we would continue to support her financially. But if she didn't reflect, if she demanded money, we would sever ties completely. Deep down, I knew it was time to confront Martha's blatant disregard for the well-being of her own family. I believed that even someone as money-driven as Martha would deeply reflect on her actions upon hearing that her own son had passed away. However, the very next moment, Martha burst into loud laughter. "What's so funny?" I questioned. "Well, isn't it obvious? If Mark is dead, that means his inheritance will be distributed to me too. Excuse me, I've been looking into it since I heard that Mark was sick. Listen here, 2/3 of Mark's assets are yours, but 1/3 is mine." I was at a loss for words. I never anticipated that when she first heard her son was sick, she wouldn't look into treatment, but into how the inheritance would be divided. My anger surpassed. I was simply dumbfounded. My husband seemed to feel the same way, and as our eyes met, he slowly nodded. This was the signal to continue with the plan. Once again, I said to Martha in a strong tone, "Martha, did you hear what I said?" Mark is dead. I heard. What about it? Aren't you sad your own son passed away before you? Martha replied nonchalantly. You just make sure to send me some. I won't let you get away with not doing it. With a click, the phone line was cut off, and a dial tone echoed. I glanced at my husband and saw that he was shaking, his face red with anger. Mark, are you okay? I asked. My husband looked into my eyes and said, I'm cutting ties with her. She'll likely come here eventually, demanding money. Let's wait until then, okay? But are you really okay with this, cutting off ties just like that? Yeah, I have no regrets. After that call, she's no mother. My husband's eyes were filled with hatred, and I felt the same way. A person who only thinks about money over her own son's life is not family to me. A few days later, as expected, Martha came to our house. For the time being, I decided to hide my husband in the next room and deal with Martha myself. Martha approached me with a face like a demon. Hey, give me Mark's inheritance right now. Again with that? Anything else to say? He's already dead, isn't he? It's pointless to say anything now. Yet you never even visited him. What are you saying? Are you really his mother? You're so annoying. Give me the inheritance right away. I don't mind getting the lawyer. Speaking more would be a waste of time. Just as I thought that, my husband emerged from the next room. Seeing him, Martha let out a startled gasp as if she had seen a ghost. Mark, why weren't you dead? Long time no see, Mom. Sorry, but the news about my death was a lie. A lie? How could you be so disrespectful? I wanted to confirm your true nature, Mom. I was curious about how you'd handle the allowance if your son died, but you turned out to be a gold digger, just as I suspected. I understood perfectly. What? How dare you call your mother a gold digger? Silence. I'm cutting ties with a toxic parent like you. My husband's angry shouts left Martha with her mouth agape. She couldn't come to terms with the fact that her own son was severing ties with her. What does this mean, Mark? She stammered. It means exactly what I said. I can't consider someone like you as my mother. No way. What about the allowance? Do you really think I would? You're on your own with the debts. We're moving. Wait, please. If you do that, what about my living expenses? Teary-eyed and pleading, Martha reached out to my husband. He forcefully shook off her hand, looked at her coldly, and said, I don't care about your living expenses. You have been living off us without even a single apology. I really understand your despicable nature now. Don't you dare show up in front of us again. No, wait, Mark. Are you going to abandon your mother? Ignoring her words, my husband grabbed Martha's arm and dragged her to the front door. He threw her shoes and bag outside and chased Martha out of the house. Martha made a fuss outside for a while but disappeared after a bit, perhaps unable to withstand the eyes of the neighbors. She tried contacting us multiple times, but we ignored all of her attempts. We set Martha's number to be automatically rejected, and we finished moving. Regarding the matter of co-signing for the debts, it became invalid since Martha had made Mark the co-signer without his consent, and therefore he was not responsible. Without the allowance from us, Martha seemed to be leading a miserable life. It's only natural, considering she had been using the allowance for her gambling habits instead of paying off her debts. She still had a mountain of debts and was chased by debt collectors every day. Unable to gamble anymore, she seems to be working from dawn to dusk. For the foreseeable future, it's unlikely that she will be able to pay off her debts completely. She will have to keep working until she is unable to move. This is entirely her own doing. As for us, we are spending fulfilling days in our new home. My husband's condition has stabilized, and he has returned to work. After some time, there's a new life growing in my belly. We're going to have an additional member in our family next year. From now on, we want to spend happy days as a family of 3.